we're doing it live with no theme song and no introduction because it's already 1:45 and I'm just getting started. Oh my gosh. So for those of you guys who are regulars who are tuning in, I apologize. This is my fault. And I have no one to blame but myself and Tom King. So today we are talking about Wonder Woman, the closeout. How do we even discuss this, guys? Wonder Woman by Tom King was Twitless's big idea.
Introduce me so I can talk to the audience.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. My gosh, I'm entirely off my game. I'm ruined.
That's okay.
We have Hutch over here, you lousy kids, the gaming channel, and of course on the end, comics historian and general academic Twitless.
What's up?
Thank you so much for tuning on. But this is I do feel like I should blame you a little bit for.
No, it is. It's my fault.
For so desperately wanting to read a Tom King
my
story.
pitch. No, so my pitch here was that this whole thing started with a question. The question was, since Wonder Woman has always been a feminist character, like how what is the acceptable range of making that character? How do you do that character well? And because there's been a lot of social justice recasting of a lot of characters and making characters playing them out of character essentially. It's like, and they're doing that a few recent examples. You have like Batman being like lectured to about how dare you fight crime essentially, and it's like he's now hand-wring over putting criminals in prison. Hey Dave. So the idea here is the fact that, well, if Wonder Woman's always been written from the day one, has always been written by a kinky, sex positive feminist, like how does that play out? And if you take someone like Tom King, who is definitely a feminist, and you put him on the feminist character in DC Comics, or the main feminist superheroine, does that actually work? And tentatively, I know there's not agreement on, I know the rest of the panel will probably not agree with me on this, but I do think that initially, I think the first 6 issues, my answer for that was that I felt halfway decent about it. It was about 50-50 for me. There were moments that I feel like were done very well. It was kind of a Tom King pitched this sort of feminism for boys, essentially, which was...
Sorry, this comment from the metal deserves... I'm sorry to interrupt, man, but I blame the government. That's
USAID.
That's particularly appropriate in this story.
Yeah. So the whole reason was, okay, let's see if Tom King, because like a lot of people have hated his run on a lot of other characters, and they've really gotten upset about, I can't believe when Tom King did this to Batman and Catwoman. I can't believe when Tom King did this to Flash or whatever. Like just these moments that just seem to be just character assassinations. So I would still venture to say
Adam Strange.
Yeah, Adam Strange, definitely. Yeah.
Did he? Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah. It's fine.
It's not worth getting into. It's not.
No.
I would still venture to say, as much as I started to, and I'm gonna, like I said, the issue, one of the issues we're gonna talk about tonight, like made me want to like put it through a shredder. That being said, I still think that my theory still had some weight to it, because as bad as some of the stuff that happens in the comic are, I don't think Wonder Woman's character itself has been assassinated, maybe mishandled or more made irritating, but I don't feel like Wonder Woman has been assassinated. I don't go, oh my gosh, that's not Diana at all.
No, there's something you said for that. It's like, and that's I have to say that, like, I have to agree with you on that. Like, many of his King's characterizations of the characters are accurate. He just has them doing boring and or stupid things,
or downright frustrating.
right. So it's like, man, if Tom King, if you could ever write a story, you could populate that story with real relatable people. But
yeah, I should explain one of the reasons why we're so late is that Tom King does not know how to get to an ending in a story. And so Matt has been reading issue after issue after issue after issue waiting to get to the natural end of the story, which has not ever come.
We still haven't gotten to a real end of the story.
Issue 17. Well, it gets derailed. So like they're on issue 17. They're still doing the sovereign thing. And like I said, I hate to say it, but I read ahead a bit and it gets worse.
Well, and I only got 14. I stopped at 14. I was like, I'm already like, so late. We're stopping it here. Because there's a moment at the end of 14 that almost feels like an ending.
And it says to be continued.
Right.
It does. Well, and then the thing was I thought for the life of me that it was and that we were gonna had it in my head. We talked about this before Christmas, and I don't know everything with the thing, but I had in my head that we're reading 8 and 10. And so I read 8. I read 7 just for kicks earlier this week.
Yeah.
And then I read 8 and I looked at 9, like, oh no, the story continues in 9. And then I looked in 10 and the story continues in 10. And then like 11, 12, and 13 were the absolute power tie-ins. So I just skimmed those.
Right.
Because they're not really part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then 13, like the end of 13 ties into the beginning of 14. So I started reading 14. It didn't make any sense. So I had to go back and figure out why it didn't make any sense. And I'm like, where is it stopping?
The absolute power.
14. I really want to talk about 14, but we're not going to get to it tonight.
Yeah,
so,
we might. Well, it depends. We might. I actually do want to talk about 14 because I really want to end on that if we can. We'll see.
I think we should do 14. I don't think we can do 14 tonight. So more content for more shows. This is easy. Just okay, it's great.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fine. I don't want to read. Okay. I'm having an emotional reaction.
I'm committed. I'm committed to seeing the end of the Sovereign storyline at this point because I just want to see how badly that plane gets landed.
So we're going to do this for a couple of years.
knowing Tom King, that is correct.
Don't say things like that, Hutch. Well, that reminds me of something that I have to share. We are okay. Star has appeared, and shadows are falling. Anyway, I got myself sidetracked with a song lyric, and now I can't think of what I was going to say next.
We're talking about number 7, Star's Storyteller's asking.
Yeah. Wonder Woman, Tom King's Wonder Woman.
I got you covered. If you want to start if you want me to pull some images and stuff. Okay. So I'm going to say just a couple of things I liked about this. We can just move quickly through it, and then
this whole thing. I want to. Yeah, you go ahead and talk. There's something I want to look up though here, quick. Okay,
gotcha.
On my end.
So I don't like how Wonder Woman, and this is something that Tom King is doing with her, and it's this deliberate, this habit in the Wonder Woman comic to basically be like, actually, Wonder Woman is like better than you guys. And I'm like, I hate that habit. Yeah, it's annoying really and it's unnecessary. We all know Wonder Woman is great. You don't have to point out that she's actually like better or something than Superman is or something. Just stop. So I hated that. Aside from that, just having Clark and Diana hang out and talk and be friends was fine. I mean, like, I'm sure we could quibble about individual things about it, but overall, as a whole, yeah. I was, and they're shopping for a present for Bruce for his birthday. And like I said, there were moments that annoyed me, but like I said, as a whole, I don't think this issue was bad. I was just like I said, 2 characters that I like who were getting along and being friends. And so, like I said, overall, that I kind of liked that. That's pretty much all I have to say about it.
So here's issue 7. We'll talk a little bit about the plot. They are going to this mall in space.
Yeah.
The Andromeda thing. And here is the thing that gets me is that like, oh, it's insufferable. So this takes place. First of all, it's out of place with the story. So issue 7, they're like,
this takes place between issue 5 and so you had to go back and resituate it. So yeah, that's a little that's right, one of the irritating things. Yeah,
but it's also because like issue 4 is a breakaway from the Sovereign story, so that this Wonder Woman could give Tom King the best day ever. Tiny boy Tom King the best day ever.
Right.
So so then this would have been another breakaway from the main Sovereign storyline, which already. Just having these breaks in the Sovereign storyline detract the importance of the Sovereign story at all, because to the point where I've gotten to in 14, Wonder Woman has still never met the Sovereign, has no concept of it. It's just this. There's not even a Moriarty aspect to this guy because he's a putz. And so that's the thing. So this is a total distraction from that. But here is the part. I will share this on the screen here. Give me just a second to load that up. I didn't find the other thing I was looking for. I'll have to find some other way of doing that here. Give me a second. Oh, come on, brain.
While you're looking, Hutch, what was your take on issue 7, so we can move quickly through it?
I don't know. It just seems very odd. I mean, look how they're hugging. It's like they're just saying hi. They're friends, but they're hugging like she's having an emotional breakdown or something. She just parked. She parked in the parking lot and is coming in complaining about parking, and then she hugs him this way. It's like it's. I don't know.
Well, and the whole parking thing. So
yeah.
Here's the thing that I was. This is the moment that entirely took me out of the story, right? Because remember, right, we're dealing with this this sovereign, this idea that the America has a secret king of its secret government, and that he's powered by the lasso of lies, this forgotten artifact, and people are dying, and the Amazons are being blamed on it. It's this whole super heavy like narrative story, and we took a break from it for Tom King's Best Day Ever, sure, and what we have, Wonder Woman's nearly been killed by all of her greatest enemies, and now we're flashing back to a day in the life. And I'm going to read this. Here's how it leads on here. The Andromeda Mall is located at exit 37 of the square root of Highway 2 in sector 2814. It is the largest shopping complex in the known universe, featuring 500,000 stores, slightly over half of which are not Earthbucks coffee shops. Oh, that's so funny, guys. Guys, it's a bunch of things that make fun of ideas that somebody might have about math if they weren't actually paying attention in school, and it mashes it up with a joke about Starbucks because we all live in the city.
Rhys, Rhys, if you're getting gate kept at this point, like you're not going to make it.
Right. Yeah, that's genius. Right. And I mean, and it's like this whole thing, right? It's got all this super self-aware little stuff, and it's Encyclopedia Galactica. That's where it's claiming from. So
it's poor man's Hitchhiker's Guide.
Tom King is reminiscing on how much fun it was to read the Hitchhiker's book when he was 17. And now he's like, oh, wait, I'm writing Wonder Woman. Let's have her go to space and have a day with her best gay friend, Superman. And Superman is the gayest. It's not even the gay Superman. And he's so incredibly gay. This entire book. It's like Tom King is like,
okay, he wasn't being gay. He wasn't being
watching
gay.
Sex in the City. Why don't I write?
He was being a little metrosexual. I will agree. And like I said, those were things. It's like if I just tick a checkbox of like, okay, like these are things that irritate me. No, I don't think Superman would be getting pedicures like this. But at the same time,
it's like Superman. Okay, so Superman, even if he was to want to get a pedicure and like, nobody else has the technology that can cut my cuticles. Like, dude, you've got heat vision.
Yeah,
you shave with a mirror. Everybody knows this.
No, I know, but like this is him playing
so retarded.
Him playing into it for her benefit, so they can have a day out. Because what he's doing, and this is also like playing into what because there's a subtext here. And when Wonder Woman is hugging him at the beginning, it does look a little awkward at first, but the subtext is that we all know, and they know, because Superman is aware of the sovereign issue. And Wonder Woman is kind of like, that hug is supposed to be like, yeah, I just parked, but this is me essentially having some catharsis for my life is hell right now, which kind of comes out later when they're talking about it. And so Superman's basically
in the most awkwardly forced way ever.
So
it's like
I'm not
writing makes listen. This is Tom King's writing, especially in this issue, not necessarily in all issues, but this issue with the framing he's doing, it honestly makes Kevin Smith's writing in Mallrats seem nuanced and complex.
Yeah.
Again, this one didn't bother me as much. Like I was like, okay, like yes, there were little irritating things here and there, but I was able to overlook the bulk of it for just Superman is he's doing these things not because he wants to do them so much as he's doing it because he thinks it will make Wonder Woman feel better. And that's a Superman. Superman would do that. Like, I think Superman would do things he would not normally do because he's like, man, Wonder Woman seems kind of down. So I'm going to go get like, you know, a pedicure with her. Now, I don't think he'd do it in the way that Tom King does it because Tom King kind of wussifies everybody. So that's, which is why I like him when he's writing Wonder Woman more than I like when he's writing male characters, because he writes Wonder Woman as strong, but he starts to wussify the male guys. So it's like the more that he plays with the females in his toy box, the more okay with it I am. The more he plays with males in the toy box, the less okay I am with it I am. But overall, I was like, especially considering that we're about to go into issue 8, which is actually like made me want to have like I said, a severe meltdown. I'm going to have a meltdown in a second. Yeah. This one, like I said, really did not bug me that much. So I'm saving my ire for, I'm about to like, you know, start.
Yeah. Okay. One second, I got to address Dave. Yeah, Dave, I also love Mallrats. I'm not trying to diss on Mallrats, but Mallrats was very intentionally trying to riff on the Animal House kind of National Lampoon dumb humor kind of thing. It was very intentionally writing into it. And so the characters in Mallrats are all intentionally one-note characters because they're all playing a simple rock and roll song with a plot. It's not an orchestra, it's a garage band. And I think it's amazing for what it is, but it's still painting with a very limited palette, very intentionally so. And that doesn't mean it's not good or enjoyable. It's just doing a very simple thing with it. And this uses a lot of the same kind of tropes that and story elements that Mallrats uses less effectively. Mallrats is a simple story with of simple characters that is saying something about adulthood. And this is a story that really just exists to give Diana something sort of kind of like catharsis, but also allows her to stand up and say, no, I don't need your help at all. And that's really, it's all about is so, you know, it paints up that she's going through this huge emotional deal, but she doesn't really need her friends, but maybe a little bit, but she won't truly acknowledge it. And I hate it. I hate this story. And the thing that I find really frustrating is this little Adams, Douglas Adams ripoff concept about the space mall, right? Mm-hmm. Like this could be really at home in a story that's not supposed to be taking itself seriously, right? Like if Peter David had introduced this in Young Justice, or if we would have seen Keith Geffen do something like this, right? It would be a situation where like, okay, or if we even had a space cabbie story where, you know, space cabbies, you know, gotta take somebody to the mall or whatever. You could have enough. The whole premise of this is super whimsical, and none of the characters that are involved are whimsy characters. And it just seems disjointed and disingenuous.
It does feel disjointed because the story so far has been very landlocked, and that's what's allowed us to actually get invested in Wonder Woman's plight. So this is why, like, you got to be careful with how you use space, because if Wonder Woman could just leave to go on an intergalactic shopping trip, yep, it does remove some of the tension of her being like locked in this struggle with Sovereign, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that Superman's basically like, oh, please, I could totally help, and it just there's just some things you just don't want to acknowledge. They're always going to be present in the superhero universe, but by
think about how they were doing that in Superman. We're reading that like they just didn't mention the whole super family for the most part, because it's Superman's story. It's not the story of the Kents. Exactly, it's just Clark's, and they did a really good job of Williamson. Right, did a really good job of just not mentioning it, just not talking about it, and just feeding that suspension of disbelief, right, subtly, and I don't know. And the other, we
do got to keep moving because we're gonna hit issue 8.
Wait a minute. You can't go back and forth, and I'm like, let me talk.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Hutch. Go ahead.
No. I was saying that to get to you, Hutch. I was saying we're gonna get moving so we could get to your point.
The problem with this entire series is that one issue, even though it's an endless story, it's like it doesn't tie into the next one. It's like the last one ended up with Wonder Woman being beaten in the Washington Mall, and she collapses having beaten the others, and then issue 7 opens with her going into space and doing this. It's like there's these wild changes of pacing, and it's like, how did you go from that to this? And that one didn't seem like an ending either, and it's like, but all of a sudden you're taking a diversion. And then
I can defend that first. I can defend that one for a little bit for a second, because I think what happened here was a scheduling issue. It's not entirely Tom King's fault. It's probably the editorial's fault, because they wanted to have this issue synergize, I think, with Batman's official birthday. So I think that the reason why because it doesn't make any other sense why the story would get told out of order this way. But I think it was like, oh, we want the special Batman issue to line up with Batman's official birthday, and so like that. Like I'm not saying.
This almost seems like a fill-in issue, like the kind that Chuck Dixon talked about. What do they call them? Inventory story that they have. That it's like, oh, the artist is too late. But we have a fill-in that we can throw in there, done by another artist. Except that this, but it almost seems like that, like something you could stick in anywhere, and 1 or 2 bits of dialogue changed, which you can do digitally now easily. To tie it in with the ongoing story. But that's what it seems like. It's like we left that intense story, and it's not done with the Sovereign thing, and we're off here. And they kind of tie it in that he's like, hey, I can help you with your issues, and she says, no, I have to do it on my own. It's like at some point it becomes really weird that this is about the King of America who has ruled America all this time, and all that. And it's like, but we don't need to bring the Justice League into this. It's like this is a
I know, that's
crossover level story.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, there's one moment in the story that I really did appreciate was there is a time where Superman finally gets her to talk about the whole issue and says, I'm having problems with this, and the country's against me and everything, and she actually points out that I know, Clark, that you're about truth and you're about justice, and the American way is just part of your deal, and I get that. And so having Tom King actually reinforce that part of it, I was like, okay, that's a nod that I like, but it doesn't save the story for me. I still hate it. So before we get on, we'll leave this comic in 1 second. I want to address something from the chat. The Metal has come up with a perfect way to use this thing. Guy Gardner has to do a shift at the Space Mall the way a cop has to do a shift at the Earth Mall.
Yeah.
Give me an anthology, DC. I'll give you Tales from the Space Mall.
I think this story works as long as it was like, I completely agree with Hutch. It's awkwardly placed because, and again, I do think it's due to that choice to want to make it Batman's birthday. Like I said, but that's an editorial thing that you could have handled better, because people were invested in this, like this giant brouhaha, this battle between Wonder Woman and like a whole rogues gallery, and then suddenly it's like it's an interruption, and now for something completely different, and then like it's like a robot chicken cutaway.
And the thing is, editorial was on board, right? This is only 7 issues into the series. One of the things I've had a problem with was that I felt like this story didn't have any basis to get going the way it was. It was all herky-jerky to start with. And you could have had Tom King say, oh, here's the story. Tom King is like, that's really great. But Tom, listen, you want to do this like 12-issue story, but we're going to have to, have this other stuff. Why don't you write some fill-in issues and, get some one-and-dones under your belt, and then we can go ahead and hit your big story at like number 8. You
probably could have solved it by making it a backup story, but the problem is that Tom King is already doing something super clever with his backup stories that, no one's totally going to predict. As he's telling the stories of the world's finest, and that's not going to synergize with the story he's telling at all, right? So Tom King is already taking his backup story slot to basically tell a secondary story that's feeding into the main narrative at a certain point. And I think
this would have been better. This story would have been way better in 12 to 8 pages.
So you could have literally, you could have done it, and it would have been fine as a backup, because people understand that backup stories can be like side You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is sort of happening. You know, like people kind of like are prepped in serial comics medium to understand that backup story can contribute to canon while not necessarily have it happening at the same time, and you keep your momentum going with your main storyline. That's usually how they've handled it in years past, from what I understand, and that's probably the maneuver they should have done, as opposed to just stopping their own storyline. So, but
Hajj, not a dream.
Earlier,
real story.
Earlier, when I was trying to speed us along, I wanted to make sure I was trying to speed Rhys along so we could get to your points.
Sure.
Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to issue 8 and I have a meltdown in a coronary?
Well, as a man who gets pedicures, I really didn't mind seeing Superman get one.
Okay, there we go.
Because no, seriously, I don't even mind saying that pedicures are great for my feet, because I've had lots of foot problems. It's like Superman would have foot problems. He would. and just burning the edges of your nails off is, not there you go.
Super pedicure right there.
Yeah, he had a super manicure and a super pedicure, and it's like he's not an artist. He might be able to get the cut done, but these people are artists, so sure, why not? I could actually see him enjoying that. That's all. And and it is a good time to talk to your friend, because you can't go anywhere. It's like you're stuck talking to each other. It would also make more sense to actually have the intense conversation here, instead of, they kind of did that several pages before this, and then, now they're just joking around. He just keeps doing jokes and stuff. And Superman is doing a lot of corny jokes in this. I don't know why
but they were dad jokes.
They're
and
dad
Superman,
jokes, yeah.
And Superman is a dad, and he's trying to cheer up his friend on purpose. That's a Clark move.
Yeah.
Clark would do that. I did not. Because he was trying to cheer her up. It wasn't just because Superman is trying to be a little more. I think he's doing this for her. If it was just normal Clark being normal, it'd be like, dude, what are you doing? But it's very clear this whole issue is him. I'm doing this for, or at least I imagine this is what you need, Diana. This is what I imagine that you would like, partially because I'm married to a woman, Lois, and this is probably things that she likes. So, like, in that sense, I can see it not being so bad.
I also cannot understand why this isn't happening at an Earth Mall.
I can understand why it's not at an Earth Mall. They'd be mobbed.
I mean, they have civilian identities, and Wonder Woman's is very, very plain. Nobody would notice her.
Sovereign is after she was like secretly on the run, even I think as that identity. So there's that angle. I think there's looking for a present for Bruce, and it's for the man who has everything. It's literally that setup, that inverse.
And that's
setup
also.
They can also talk openly in English, and not everybody's listening to them about their secret identity stuff and things like that.
Yeah, maybe that's true. I guess that makes sense.
All right, we do have to move on. We do got to move on.
The man who has everything, because that is definitely the setup they're playing on
here.
Yeah. Can we talk just briefly about why on earth Tom King is obsessed with that story?
Because it's really good.
It's okay. Have you ever seen the made for PBS movie Overdone of the Memory Bank?
I've seen the MST3K version.
Okay.
Yep.
Don't put a good movie in the middle of your bad movie. Right?
That's the riff. Yeah.
Tom King consistently brings up that story in like every other issue. And it's one of those things where you're just demonstrating how you're a bad writer, because you're not adding it. And I like Overdone of the Memory Bank. I watched the uncut version, and it is much better. They take out about 15 minutes of story development to make the MST out of it. But it's just one of these things where like you keep reminding us that there are better comics out there, Tom. I don't understand.
I don't get it.
I just don't get it.
All right, issue 8. Let's do this. Let's okay. All right. So I've been as generous as I can be to this series, to Tom King, to Wonder Woman, and the take on this. This is where it turned south, utterly south for me.
Yeah.
And this is where I started to not suspect. This is where it really started to come together for me that Tom is. I still have a little inkling of a hope he might be able to salvage some of this, but this is where I started to go, oh, this is the direction he's going in. And it's not only irritating and frustrating, I find it to be blasphemous. And there is no way on hell, no way in hell that he would get away with doing this to the Quran, what he does to the Bible in this issue. And this makes me almost want to write a letter to DC Comics saying, how could you do this? Like, this is the most unjust kind of thing, to just use my holy book as fodder for you to score cheap political points because you don't like Donald Trump. I don't try to get super religious often on this channel or most channels, but if you're going to just start this comic with let's see here, where is it? Here we go. The credits page. You're just going to start quoting. Sorry, let me scroll up for a second. You're just going to start dropping Bible verses so that you can try to again make some sort of this is the misogyny part of the Bible, and I'm just like, this is where I start to lose my professionalism, and I start to want to say curse words because this is very precious to me, and how dare you? And I've taught lessons about, not Sunday school lessons, but I've taught literary lessons about the verse he's taking. I wouldn't say completely out of context, but he's definitely twisting it.
Oh, it's definitely out of context because here's why it's out of context, is because these instructions that Paul gives in Ephesians and in Titus, these are, first of all, they are modeled after Greco-Roman household codes, right? And so they address the different members of the household, right? So this is addressing the Ephesian people about how men are to act. This is how women are to act. This is how children are to act.
If I can interject, there's one thing.
Only dealing with one part of the family, they're automatically out of context with the others.
So
that's referential.
I will say that I have seen this verse does get, so the one we're talking about, wives be subject to your husbands as you are to the Lord. So that one often gets quoted, and I have seen some Christians, whether it's in real life or in literature, quote that one half of that part and just say, "Oh, women, you're just supposed to submit." Right. And but okay, let me finish. I'll land the plane very quickly. So the thing here that has to be understood is that the other half of this is husbands, lay down your life as Christ did for the church, and to lay down is also an act of submission. So it's not. So the idea is the fact that the women are submitting, but it's not that the men don't submit. The men submit to God, and in a sense they're submitting harder if you think about it, because like if you're submitting to God, if you're not submitting to a human being, the submission is more total. So when I have seen some people like play with that verse, whether to try and push back against it or to use it as a cudgel against women, I do have to say that my understanding of the verse is that. And there's a marriage has mutual submission in it, and right. If men aren't being submissive or more submissive, at least to God, then you're getting it wrong.
Well, and it's like there's I think it's Thessalonians, Second Thessalonians, where it says that if a man is not caring after his household, he's worse than an unbeliever, right? So the idea of men submitting or being as Christ the church, the whole point about that is that Christ laid down his life. He died for the church. and died. Why? And what was the purpose of that? To perfect and to glorify the church. So there is a big picture servitude that is mutual and transcendent, that is part of this whole exchange.
I think the one thing that could really help Twitless here is another quote, one by William Shakespeare. The devil can cite scripture for his purpose, which is what is being done here. He's using this to his advantage, the way he ties it in with, and this is the way your country submits to me, and etc. He's using, and I don't like it either. I also don't like all the razzing on male-female roles in marriage and everything in this story, which is probably more offensive to me than the Bible stuff, because like I say, he's just quoting the Bible to his own advantage.
Right.
You can find something you can use to your own ends.
He is using the lasso of lies. He's an untrustworthy narrator, right? That's something that I believe has been firmly established. We were discussing last time. We went over the first part of the story, whether he was an untrustworthy narrator. I think that's definitely the case. Becomes very obvious by the time we get to where I have read earlier. But we definitely have that aspect of it here. I think that's in play.
So I do agree. I do agree with Hutch partially. The problem is that it gets, to me, it was worse than just, oh, the villain's misquoting scripture, because Tom King's understanding of scripture is this.
Yes.
So like, that's the thing, is that he's not just saying, oh, well, the real version of scripture is actually better than this, and then the end of this was downright blasphemous.
Well, and then the thing is,
it just
one of the things
getting worse.
So to interrupt just one thing on this, part of what irritated me about that was that there. So at the end of it, just to spoil it, Diana says, "I don't believe you."
I was gonna wait for that. Do we want to skip to that part?
We'll just do this. Okay, I guess.
If we're there, we're there. We might as well. Okay,
I guess we're there. Because I mean, there's the rest of it's just there is a lot of torture porn that is going on here too. That's the other side of it that I find really irritating. And here's the thing: is the torturing. Right, the picture of the torturing that Tom King is painting is domestic life, right?
Let me put it for the audience what's happening though. So it
is this Pleasantville sort of idea that building a home and maintaining a home is somehow torturous, is somehow undignified.
As if he's pillaring the 1950s.
As if, and this is the thing, as if living in a house that you have to maintain is somehow beneath a person. Like if Diana Prince had her own home where she wouldn't have to do all of the same things that she is doing in this torturous world of degradation. Like, listen, I gotta wash my dishes, whether I gotta make dinner, whether there is anybody else there to eat it or not.
So for the audience who's there's just kind of, because this issue is actually kind of really trippy too, and Tom King's writing really does lean into this, not just in this issue, but in the issues to follow in the story arc. What's happening is that currently the Sovereign, who's this very old, wizened-looking character, he claims he's the King of America, who's been there since the very beginning, and he basically made a deal with the U.S. presidents to be the King of America and just let them be pretend presidents. So America is not actually a democracy or a democratic republic. It's actually just just existing due to this secret king. Nice. And he's using his lasso of lies to mind warp Diana into this fantasy of being a submissive housewife. That's what's going on in this issue. So that's what we're seeing play out on panel, if anyone's confused.
And one of the things we're seeing too is that Steve, this vision of Steve that is being produced by the lasso in reflexivity. I can't remember the right word. Reflexivity. Yeah, there you go. I was adding an extra syllable. In reflexivity to Diana's subconscious is this image of Steve who is cruel and unloving and takes her for granted, right? Which isn't a good lie, right?
Right.
Because a good lie is supposed to be a little bit true. And there is nothing.
He would have been a better husband. He wouldn't have been so nasty.
Yeah.
The idea, sure. I mean, I don't know. Okay.
I'm so
lost at the meltdown I'm having here about the.
But once again, Tom King, in his need to mock people he disagrees with, and this is one of the things I read a comment about this from a message board talking about this comic, and somebody's like, "Yeah, that's right. You got to show those bigot right wingers what's up. Screw those guys." And I said, well, I was like, yeah, because lying and straw manning other people's beliefs and mocking things they don't believe is a great way to demonstrate that you're right and they're not.
You definitely win elections that way. You win the popular vote that way. Yeah,
because when you tell somebody you shouldn't believe that thing you don't believe, you're right. That's why I don't believe it.
Yeah, like you say, having a figment, an imagination where Steve is staying late at the office and cheating on her. She's basically being fed the parody that feminism rebelled against in the 1960s. That all men are like this. They're all patting the secretaries on the rear and having affairs at work, and they're all having a blast at their job, and the women are taking pills to survive at home, and because it's so dreary and awful. And this is. I don't know what the point is of giving her this image, except that Tom King's trying to make fun of it to us.
Correct.
But I don't get how it's torturing Diana.
Because it's putting her. I do understand how it's torturing Diana a little bit. That part makes sense a little to me. Can we pull up Metal's comment again? Because I want to actually address that for just a second.
Okay, I'm on the wrong window here.
Okay.
Metal's comment.
Diana as a trad housewife is pretty darn hot, though. So here's the funny bit, is that the times where Diana has been acting kind of trad, or acting like when she puts on the red hat with the little boy, and when she acts as the trad housewife, this is where the meme backfires, because it's like, this is actually kind of nice. Like, you're actually like, you don't sell me on a good time.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing is, so here it is. Like, here's in this vision, in this warped vision, like she didn't start dinner soon enough, and she's afraid of the whole thing, and they're making filet mignon, which is difficult, and so blah blah blah. And Steve's just like, well, I guess I'm gonna go out with the guys later, so if you don't cook, if dinner doesn't get done, I'll just eat down at the thing,
bar or whatever.
The bar, the veteran center, and the whatever. Anyway, and so it's just like, but that's not Steve at all. Like, that is not who Steve is. And once again, this is supposed to be built out of Diana's inner memories of Steve.
I can defend that a little bit. So the thing here is that this is meant to be torture, and the idea of taking Wonder Woman, if you would imagine Marston, this would be the opposite of what Marston wants in a lot of ways. I mean, and
she'd be tied up on the floor.
This is yes and no, right? Because like that idea of willing submission was a two-way street with Marston in a kinky sort of way. Right. So like this is part of one of his kink for one of his wives, and not part of his kink for his other wife.
But to bring it home, though,
was a sick dude.
I really need to watch that movie.
I just thought it was funny where that was a comedic setup. I like that. That was funny. Rhys says this. He's really sick and mested and twisted, and Hutch says, I gotta watch that movie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant. Yeah, I haven't watched that Wonder Woman movie. I've got it.
That's not the one he means. There's
sorry.
That just cracked me up. All right. So the idea of taking, if you think about the image of Wonder Woman as being Miss Female Empowerment and representative of the women's right movement during the 60s, so the symbol she became, taking her and putting her in the 1950s housewife context while she has a bad husband who kind of mistreats her is literally the most antithesis you could come up with from a supervillain standpoint. That part doesn't. That's not why I'm having a meltdown. I have a meltdown at the point, since you did mention it. I guess we should get to the point, since we already mentioned most of what happens in this comic.
So before we get to that, I want to scroll up just a little bit. There's a couple pages up there. I want to hit on one other thing that's so irritating to me. Up there with the real world one. Yeah. Okay. I just have to say, I have been reading back some old DC spy stuff as I'm trying to pick my favorite spy comic for next week.
Okay.
And I cannot stand how Tom King does Sarge Steele dirty.
Yeah.
Every single page he is on in this. If there is one, I was talking about earlier in the show, how Tom King gets most of the characters right. The one character he does never gotten right is Sarge Steele. And I'm just like, I'm okay. Rant over.
He emasculates him. That's the whole deal. Literally, like, look at it. Like, we're shooting the arrow and like emasculating his height. You have to emasculate his height, of course. He has to be overcompensating about his height. It's childish, and that's one of the weaknesses of Tom King.
And here's the thing is, I mean, I honestly believe, because Tom King used to work for the CIA, I believe this is Tom King venting about one of his bosses who wouldn't let him do what he wanted. I 100% believe his portrayal of Sarge Steele is him bitching about his office manager or something like that, because Tom King is a tiny little man.
No, that's that. I'm not going to argue with that at all. I think here's the thing. There's a lot of Tom King I could totally accept. A writer who is petty in his writing is something I personally have very low tolerance for. I can accept, and I can even my suspension of disbelief is very high. I think it's well known by our audience and panel. But one of the things I really just immediately jumps to the no, I can't stand this. Is a writer deliberately being petty,
and that's the whole theme of this entire issue.
It's I don't like it. But okay, I think some people wanted to see me have a meltdown, so let's get to the real business here. So he's quoting the Sovereign quotes more scripture, and then he hits. Here we go. It's this page here, and this is what is I'm gonna ask the indulgence, and I'm sure everyone wants to give their own private rant. But so maybe does anyone want to go first? I'll go first if you want. But
I've said what I've wanted to say. I think I don't really have anything aside from her just saying I reject your God. And it's like, which is, I mean, we have always known she's not a Christian, but it's awfully blunt about that. That's anyway. Go ahead. It ties in with what Tom King wants to say.
Right? Yeah.
That's the problem. Go ahead.
Oh, first off, I want to say that technically the Marvel and DC have both flirted with the Christian God being actually canonical at times. Sometimes they call them different names, like the Presence or the One Above All in Marvel. But like it's very clear, and it has been established multiple times that essentially there is an ultimate author to the story, and that basically means that there is essentially a one above all kind of a god. I think like I said, I think DC has the Presence or something. That's essentially it's the thing that gives the Spectre his power. It's very clearly he's working for our version of God.
Well, yeah, and the Spectre is also the angel that was given the charge of the Sodom and Gomorrah event. That's
right. So there's that. Then there's actually, like, I know Grant Morrison invented it was a Zariel or something. So there's actually, which I'm not a fan of that character in particular, but I'm just saying that for Diana to say I reject your God is it may actually violate a canonical thing. But setting that aside,
well, it also depends. That depends what you mean by reject as well. That's a whole.
That's fair.
Right.
That's fair. But yeah,
you can acknowledge the existence of something.
But yes, in the DCU, it's like the Christian religion is so true that there was a storyline where they just said, okay, you go to heaven, we're going to go to hell, and we'll contact you. The way they would split up to go to Paris and London, like, right?
Okay, exactly.
I mean, they're physical places. Like, okay, we're going to go down to hell and tackle the guy down there, and it's like, okay, they did that in the one with the back in the 90s. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
and so one before we get into this, I do want to bring up one other time where Tom King just stepping all over scripture. It says,
oh my gosh.
Here's this thing, Titus 2:3-5. Women likewise, remember that word, guys, likewise, are to be in reverent behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. Likewise means we've already been given similar instructions to a different group. So Titus, who is at this time on the island of Crete, immersed in a Greek society on the island of Crete, is being given an instruction that mirrors Greek household codes. And Tom King, because he's either stupid or a lying sack of garbage, wants us to believe that this is an exclusive command meant to demean women as opposed to being one part of a family code. And that just
so the thing being violated here is you're not allowed to tell women what to do, even if you're also telling men what to do at certain points with their roles. The fact that there are roles and you would actually dare to tell a woman what to do as her telling herself what to do is in fact the violation. So like, yeah, anyway, let's go back to let's go to this one right here.
I was flipping through it and I ran across that and I'm just like, man, it just gets me.
All right, so I'm getting fired up. Oh my gosh, how dare you, Tom King? I'm going to freaking, burn this comic and I write a letter of protest. Like I swear this, if there's a comic that could make me want to never read a comic by Tom King again, this is it. You did it, Tom King. I was willing to give you so much rope and you decided to take that rope, put it in the hands of the sovereign and strangle your own story with it. How dare you, sir, bring up my Lord and Savior to make a cheap political point in your comic? How dare you say these lines that I almost dare not repeat about, oh, well, God sent his only son to save. It didn't send his only daughter. I'm the sovereign. I'm bad and misogynist. But look, Christianity's misogynist too, isn't it? If you think about it.
And like what?
F off. Piss off forever, eternity. I am on a rant. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand this. How dare you take my faith? That's very precious to me and precious to a lot of Americans, okay? There are a lot of Americans, Tom, who take this very, very seriously, all right? They go to church and they're very quiet about it. And they're not necessarily going to be like protesting, but there are people who you just seriously stepped all over. And you would never dare do this with the Prophet Muhammad. I know you would never dare do this because we talked to someone who did. We talked to Bosch Foston, who was the only guy who actually dared to do this to Islam and got a whole bunch of death threats for it. So you're a freaking coward. You may think you work for the CIA. You are an absolute coward, you dastardly piece of garbage that you would dare take something that you do not understand, that you do not care about. And again, there was no great... Alan Moore is actually more, I think, he handled this better. Alan Moore with all of his like occultisms. Grant Morrison, when he actually like specifically called out Judeo-Christian values in Nameless, which I'm also reading at the time, he still manages to do less of a slap across the face to just trot out our Lord and Savior himself as a cheap Reddit tier. It's not even intelligent. This is Reddit tier garbage. How dare you, sir? I am so fed up with this take, and this is why you all lost in November. This is why you all thought that you had you think we were the secret kings. You guys were playing the secret king garbage. You literally had a secret king president who was behind the scenes as a bloody puppet and always projecting, accusing the enemy of what you yourselves are doing. And guess where that led you pieces of trash. I don't usually do this, but oh my gosh.
And here's part of the thing about it that is so irritating to me, right? Is that like the sovereign's whole speech about like, God, God's son was God's son because God, women couldn't do it. And it's just so stupid because it absolutely, like you're talking about Reddit tier, and that's 100%. Because it's like it absolutely misses like the entire doctrine of the Trinity, right? that the reason that the Son is the Son is because the Father is the Father, right?
I don't care if it's I don't care if it's gendered. I understand we could like unpack gender,
right? But I mean, the fact
that
the idea that the Father and the Son are of one, substance and essence is like a necessary aspect of the Christian faith. So like in this beat was wholly unnecessary. You could have made your heavy-handed point about feminism without doing this.
And I would have looked the other way on it. Okay. There's so many ways for you to make a heavy-handed point about feminism. And I would have just either rolled my eyes or would have just said, hey, I even went into the series going, hey, it's Wonder Woman. There's probably going to be some heavy-handed feminism in it. I'm okay with that. I kind of like Wonder Woman. I think she's hot. So like, I was totally fine with it. Why, Tom King, did you have to take the rope that we gave you and like tie a freaking noose around the neck of your own story to alienate, I'm not just to say half your audience, because I think that this goes beyond the left and right lines. When you're just insulting Jesus, there are people on the left who probably found this deeply offensive. You know what I mean? Like this crosses a line. You could be a Democrat and be like, no, I'm not comfortable with you, like, taking Jesus to like make you these points. And then after that, to then put the bloody dirt cherry on the whole thing, to have her say, well, actually, what did she say? I do not believe in your God. So like the whole culmination of her is like, she gets to punch the man in the face as he's quoting scripture and using Jesus and everything. And it's like, and she doesn't just say, no, you're wrong. Jesus was better. You're taking him out of context, which is what another version of the story would be. It was, no, this is all false. This is part of your lies. And I'm just and
that's the thing is like, because the whole situation, like I would have a lot of patience for the sovereign saying blasphemous things if he was being like, because he's a liar. That's his whole shtick.
Right.
If there was something there to correct the thing, so like I don't know if you ever saw the movie. Oh my gosh, I forgot what it's called. It's about a demon possessed guy and a psychiatrist.
Inner
it's a horror
Space.
thriller.
No.
Is it the recent one that they did? There's a recent one. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. Name escapes me.
Yeah.
It's not. It's Insidious or one.
Insidious. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Insidious, and it's the demon that's inside the serial killer is the narrator, and he's like the nefarious. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, nefarious. Yeah, not Insidious. Yeah,
Insidious is a different one, but yeah, it's nefarious. And so he says a lot of fake stuff, right? And there's parts where he's downright blasphemous, but like he's the bad guy, and the story itself demonstrates the falsity of what the guy has to say, and of course he's saying some true things too because he's trying to screw with this atheist's head, and so it's one of those things where it becomes a really compelling story, and like what of his do you believe and not believe? That's like a big premise, and like the but that becomes like the thing on here. There is no countering voice, right? There's just I don't believe you, and there's no like
I do not believe in your God,
right? There's no
I'm sorry, that's not.
Yeah,
and can I talk for a second? Actually, in rereading the story, one thing I noticed is that he says it's not like we were a religious family. Really, I was baptized and christened in a number of different religions, and it's like he is, like I say, he is using. He's going and picking out scripture about female submission to use for his own ends, because it's not that he believes it. It's he's using it as a weapon against her. And I see, but I see that's, still she says, I don't believe your God. He doesn't believe in God necessarily. He's just using lines that he can use to his advantage. But I don't like her rebelling because, like you say, there is a, to tie this into DC Comics back in the 80s, Secret Origins had 4 possible origins for the Phantom Stranger. I don't know if you read that or not.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of my favorite stories. Was the one that was where he's the wandering Jew, which is like a legend. Yeah, it's a legend. It's not an official thing, but it's like this guy whose family was wiped out because they were in Bethlehem when they came through killing all the kids, and his wife got killed, and so he takes it out on Jesus and is punished by God for it, having to wait until Jesus comes back. And then in, like, I think the Middle Ages, some church people are abusing some lady, and she says, I'm not going to let the people who profess to work for the Lord, she, and it's like, I forget what she says exactly. It's like, these are just the people who say they work for God, and they're not really God, they're not God. And it's like he has an awakening and repents, because he suddenly realizes that, what people do, in the service of God isn't necessarily always, he makes the division between God and what people say, who claim that they're working for God do.
Yeah.
And that's a big divider, and that's something she could have done. Yeah, she could have, because I'm getting Twitless's point that she could have said something about, you're misusing these words, and instead of saying I reject God, that's
it's very clear that Tom King is using this, it's not just the Sovereign using it as a tool against Wonder Woman. Tom King is using it against the conservative Christians.
Right.
It's very clear what he's doing there, and
it's ranting to the audience. Yeah,
exactly. No, and it's pretty transparent. So I don't think he can. I know he would try to hide behind it's just the villain saying it. It's like, no, Tom King, I'm not. Don't insult my intelligence. This is very clearly you with your axe to grind. Don't insult me with that.
I think the line
I get it.
I was going to say, I think the line that pins it down, to ask Abigail's question. So is King saying the scriptures are a lie? The reason I think that he is saying that, and what nails and pins it down, is when she says, "I reject your God," she is giving the imprimatur of divine authority to the sovereign. She's saying that he is speaking on behalf of God, and that is what she is rejecting, as opposed to saying, "I reject what you're saying," and say, "I don't believe you." That would be a way to have your cake and eat it too, by rejecting the vessel and not the words, by saying you are a liar and the things you're saying are lies. But that's not what he says. She says, "I reject your lies, I reject your lies, and I reject your God." And by saying I reject your God, he is giving the imprimatur of authority to the sovereign. And that's the thing that really nails that, I think.
Even if the implication here is that, like, oh, the sovereign's worshiping the wrong God because his God's like the wrong, incorrect version. A page before, we get more of what Tom King and where Wonder Woman are coming from, which is this very secular humanist standpoint. You know, when did you ever believe me, your mother, essentially a demigoddess, but basically she believes in herself. So we can see again, it's what we have the text and we have the subtext. The subtext here is blatant. It's screaming blatantly. So and I'm not going to let Tom King, he's not smart enough. Like I did say he was smarter than a couple other writers, but he's not smart enough to hide behind the clear subtext here. And I refuse to let him try and pull a fast one there. Tom King, message received. You think that the misogynist Christians are need a little lesson and need to be shown strong women. And I'm just like, you didn't need to do this. This was unnecessary. And this is the type of Reddit tier secular humanist atheism crap that it has no place. It has no place in a superhero universe. The superhero universe is nothing but gods. And a god above them. So, like, again, this is if you're an atheist, don't go to superheroes for your storytelling. I'm sorry, you're not gonna have a good time. But this in particular, and again, the cowardice of it, because there is no way that Tom King would have done this to most other religions. Buddhism isn't up here to, like, I need to teach this, or the other religions that have serious problems with, male and female rights, right? What's ironic here is that Western Christians tend to have the highest level of female empowerment on the planet, and many other religious traditions put women far below and do not give them. Many cultures do not give them basic civil rights. So
I would argue every religion and culture doesn't do that. Even secular humanism, because it's so based on power, and the idea that even the women's rights, pro-abortion, women are just like men kind of thing. It ends up making women servile to men's libidos. There's nothing that encourages, nothing has encouraged more women to be victimized by skeezy guys than the invention of birth control, and it's made women disposable and cheap, and it's done nothing but feed on the worst impulses of a chauvinistic society, because it doesn't honor women, because the stakes are nil. And so it's just like everything that Tom King thinks he's lifting up actually makes women slaves, and he doesn't even understand it because he's a dunce. And
that being said, Tom King, never pick up a Bible again unless you're seriously going to read it with an open mind. Otherwise, just put it on a shelf and don't use it for sacrilege. I have no tolerance for that.
I don't think he picked one up now. I think he just did a search for what are the passages that people use in suppressing women, and then he just put those in here. And he didn't have a Bible in front of him, I don't think.
He just Googled it. Alexa, tell me the verses. Yeah, okay. No, you're probably right. But so like I said, I would obviously, yes, Tom King, read a Bible, go to church, get saved. But but aside from that, don't you dare. I hate it even when there are I'm always wary even when Christians sometimes use the Bible in fictional context. I sometimes get wary because I do have a certain iconoclasm, but to see someone so willfully use it as a cudgel to score cheap points because, like I said, clearly he doesn't like Trump. And like I said, the Trump derangement syndrome has just reached terminal stage with some of these brainlets. And again, I normally don't try to be this insulting, but you don't bring in my Lord and Savior to score these cheap points.
The King of the universe is not your cheap prop, Tom.
Well, yeah, I know, and it's so offensive. And again, if you wanted to do he's the bad guy, he's taking it out of context. This was the narrative, because again, the narrative also informs us and tells us a story. Mm-hmm. And the narrative is that he's pushing. Diana is not just pushing against his manipulations of Scripture. He's pushing against the institutions that use that Scripture as a whole.
Yeah,
so
but here's the thing:
it's very clear she's not just fighting him. She's pushing against. That's why she's dressed up in the imagery we have. She's pushing. There's a symbolic level to this.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Symbolically, she's pushing against conservative Christianity and just unnecessary. You did not have to do this. You could have had this story. You could have had the sovereign. You could have even done the 1950s housewife thing. You did not need to bring out all the Scripture. It could have simply take out all the Scripture quotations. The story plays like exactly the same. You lose like nothing. The only thing, which again demonstrates that the only reason it's there, the only real purpose it's there, because if you take it out, it doesn't really remove anything from the story. The only real reason it's there is so that he can again score those Reddit gold. You get those Reddit updates. There you go. I hope it was worth it, Tom King. I hope it was worth getting those 2 upvotes you got.
Yeah, you're right. The story is almost like I said. It's got too much it's trying to do with this fake, Steve that is, not the Steve that she knows, that's in her head, and all these Bible verses about submission and being subservient, and it's like it doesn't know what it knows what it's trying to lecture us, but it doesn't know what it's trying to do to Wonder Woman. It really is all over the place.
Well, and I think that's actually reinforced in the next issue 9. Which I don't want to spend the whole time going over it because the plot is basically it doesn't exist. There is no plot.
Yeah. She fights Cheetah.
But I want to go ahead and share real quick.
She fights Cheetah.
Look at this cover, guys. Come on. This cover is great. I just want to talk about this. It's like the design of this cover. It's like a rock show poster. It is just great.
There's very good art. The art in this series
this cover
pretty good.
So much. So in this whole series, this whole issue, it's a series of vignettes that where
I'm sorry, this is not the one she fights Cheetah. She fights Cheetah in the next one. Sorry. This is the one where she's just being more brainwashed. Sorry.
Yeah, right. This
is an entire issue of her having conversations in her head while she's in a prison cell
with a rat.
And she's in solitary confinement, and she doesn't know how long she's been there, and she's having these conversations with the imaginary Steve in her mind. Now, this is important. And throughout the story, they talk, Steve and she talk about their relationship and what each other means, and how they have this real, honest, heart-to-heart connection, and how that maybe they weren't destined to be together, but they're choosing because they find strength and encouragement and solidarity and all the stuff that you look for in a relationship. Now, this is the Steve that's in her mind.
Right.
But in the last issue, the Steve that was in her mind was a dick. So whereas Steve in her mind this time is the only way she's able to stay sane is by remembering the Steve in her mind and going back to that place and disassociating and having all those really healthy coping mechanisms that are trauma responses that definitely don't make people go absolutely crazy. But rather than that, she's having these conversations, and the reason we have this is so that we can have the sovereign storyline and also deepen the relationship between Diana and Steve. And so we have this sort of thing. But through this whole thing, they have these moments. They're having a dinner. Oh no, it's not really a dinner. They're walking through a field of roses. Oh, it's not really that. It's fighting the devil in hell. Oh, it's not really that. It's back on Paradise Island, and it's in these scenes. They're fun and they're interesting, but it's so disjointed. It once again takes you out of the plot of the story, even though they keep talking about it, because this is basically like reading Love and Rockets. And so, if I was going to buy Wonder Woman, I would be really annoyed that suddenly I'm reading Love and Rockets. Just like if I was reading Love and Rockets and all of a sudden it turned into a heist movie, I would be really annoyed. The necessary mechanics for this to be happening inside of Diana's mind, not only does this break the plot of the story moving forward, not only does it feel like a filler issue, it also detracts from the momentum of the subconscious plot in the last book. And so it just was really boring. It was really boring. And if there's one thing a comic should never be, Tom, it's boring.
The Kanga here is more of a golden silver age thing, which they did away with in the George Perez version, but they're back now. And yeah, so the Kangas, they're like giant Kangas. They're supposed to be bigger than kangaroos and like rideable like a horse, like as sturdy as a horse and rideable like a horse. And we've seen them in the stories with Lizzie, I think, or we will see them. I don't remember. The girl in the future and we skipped over that from the last issue. That was like one of your favorite of the Trinity stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was the time traveling one where she goes back and time is traveling, and it's actually pretty funny, but it's in such a terrible issue. It's like you have to send people wait for the the trade paperback of just the Trinity stories in a separate collection.
I'll be honest, I've been skipping the Trinity stuff. I didn't like those either. I think again, it's more Tom Kingisms, and I know they're fun, but I don't like Muppet Babies, so I just can't be bothered.
Yeah,
well, I can definitely understand that. And the thing is I found that with the later stories, with the later Trinity stories on here, which are the little kids, they're Muppet Babies. They got to be so much filler. It's like, well, I have one joke and I've got 8 pages to fill it in. And what would I do if I was writing for Saturday Night Live? And well, you just told the same joke, like 7 or 8 times. I found they got really tedious the longer on they went.
That one actually bugged the hell out of me because she goes back in time to learn some martial arts in the past, and it changes the world completely to the point that they like everybody's apes, and it's like that's not what would happen if she goes back to feudal Japan. It's just I realize it's a funny story, it's a lighthearted story, but it really doesn't make any sense.
Well, and the other thing about this really crazy is, so when you first are introduced to the characters, right? When in the earliest story, you've got 13 or 14-year-old Damien, you've got 17 or 18-year-old John, and then you've got 4 or 5-year-old Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth and Damien age, and then John doesn't. And then by the time that Damien is 17, suddenly Damien and John are aging at the same rate again.
Yeah. John actually seems to have gone back in age from what he is now in the comics. It's like they aged him forward and then they somehow age him back. And we wish that they'd never aged him forward. So it's kind of like we wish that was the case, but that's not canonical as far as I know.
It was super annoying. But.
Speaking of canonical, one thing that whizzed by in the mall shopping thing was that they think about getting him a pet. They think about getting Bruce a pet. And they say, well, he likes the dog and the cow. And I'm like, is there a bat cow? Or is there a story with a bat cow? Okay, so there's bat cow. I take it that's like a Silver Age story or Golden Age story or something.
There was he got a bat cow in the New 52, I think.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so
I don't remember how or why, but he was there.
Okay, because it's sort of what we've been talking about with Superman, that it's like the stuff that's from all versions of the character's history, and just pick and choose what you want to keep in, and even though it's never been acknowledged in this timeline, it's like Suddenly Jimmy's been a turtle boy again. And it's like, was he ever a turtle boy post burn? Oh, we don't care. We don't care.
Actually, in a future, I'll just briefly note this but I'll say that they actually do bring up the turtle thing in this.
I'm not even on the turtle thing. I'm just talking about the fact that they grab stuff that's pre-crisis and just drag it in, and because it's like you can just do whatever you want now in DC, and this is why it's so hard for me to write the characters. It's like, what is history now?
So I'm gonna reinforce your point there, because they bring up the turtle thing to make that point in this very run in a future issue, to also justify why they can completely rewrite American history to be the abomination with the Sovereign. And it really is there's a few people. I think Williamson has done a halfway decent job of playing in this very broad sandbox without ruining things. I think, as you mentioned, sometimes it can create some questions, but Tom King's usage of that has led to another kind of blasphemy, which, like I said, I think I don't remember if it was issue 14 or something, but it's like there's a certain point where I go, oh, now I'm really worried about where Tom King's going to land this story. So can we actually skip a few pages ahead? I wanted to note one thing. One thing I did think was interesting about this issue. Go to the Maxwell Lord moment, if you don't mind. Here we go. So I did think this was interesting. So this was Wonder Woman has had a few infamous moments.
I hadn't thought about this being the Maxwell Lord thing. Jeepers, how did I miss that?
Yeah, this is the Maxwell Lord snap. I'm still processing like what's going on here, because that moment is often looked at very poorly as a superhero acting the way a superhero shouldn't do, and specifically Wonder Woman, right? Why is Wonder Woman the one who has to be the murderer, essentially the killer? And so we have a kind of a repeat of that, but it's happening in her head. It's just an imagining of it. Mm-hmm. And because when she actually had Sovereign by the throat for a second, she didn't do this in the previous issue. So I'm trying to think, is Tom King using this moment to redress this, or is he reinforcing it? And I'm on the fence, because there's different types of Wonder Women. Some Wonder Women, the original Wonder Woman was actually one of the least violent of the Golden Age characters. She was actually she would take Nazis and try to reform them. Like, that's how not a murderer she was. Well, at the same time, while Clark was tossing planes like bombs and saying, well, that's what you get. So Wonder Woman started off being very non-killing. And then she became more of like the sword chucker Amazon warrior later on, who became more of a killer. And then after the Maxwell Lord moment, I think there was a little bit of there was at least some pushback about, hey, is this where we want to take Wonder Woman? So I thought that Tom King's and the artist specifically using this moment here was interesting, because I think he's trying to thread a needle. I think he wants to show her as a warrior, but this does not physically happen. And when she had the opportunity to do it, she didn't do it. So I'm trying to think, is this Tom King? How is Tom King's threading of that needle going? And I do find that to be a particular interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. Because I also want to take the time. I actually really appreciated this line of Steve's. Because aren't you supposed to be one of the good people? Isn't that the whole Amazon creed? This is, of course, the Steve in her mind.
Right, so it's her.
I mean, you couldn't let me do it. Come on, I don't get a chance at fun. Basically, that's the idea that Steve is as a soldier first and foremost, and that killing is something that he's done.
And if I could speak for a moment on that, Twitless kind of jumped ahead about. She was originally. I mean, she was spreading peace and love and trying to spread the message of, not solving things with violence. That was a big thing. That's why she had such defensive weapons. She has a lasso that makes you tell the truth. She can tie you up, but she can't kill you with that. And I don't like that they equip her with a sword nowadays. But when she was reinvented by George Perez in like issue 3 or 4, the Phobos and Deimos, the sons of Ares, are going after her, and the one who has just a beard made of snakes is attacking Steve and other members of their party and Wonder Woman. There's like just thousands of snakes attacking her, and they're all poisonous. And she's like, I have one chance, and she grabs her tiara and flings it forward and beheads the guy. And they didn't dwell on that. Some people wrote in, they were very bothered by it, and she said, well, Wonder Woman doesn't really have a code against killing when it comes down to, she is saving the life of Steve and everybody else and herself. This is a kill or be killed moment, and she would do that to protect herself. And she says that. She's like, I have no other choice. Deimos must die, or Phobos must die, whichever one it is. And then he comes back alive anyway because he's a demigod. So, but I don't remember many other scenes where she ever killed anybody up until, or even was very violent up until the moment where she had to snap Maxwell Lord's neck. And again, it was because Maxwell Lord's powers have like grown way over what they used to be, and he controls Superman, and he's about to take control of Superman, and that will be deadly for the world. And she's defending the entire world.
I still hate that moment.
Well, I hate it, but I could see her doing it easily in a case of, I mean, if you were in that moment and Superman's about to be mentally dominated by this guy, what else are you going to do?
Well, first of all, I would put on my editor pants and not use Maxwell Lord in that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate what they did with Maxwell Lord around.
All right. Without going to go, she had him under the lasso at the time. The lasso that allows her to compel. And the only thing she did with it was be like, are you ever going to stop? And he goes, no. What's the only way to stop you? Kill me. And she goes, okay. And it was just like, how about, hey, Max, go to sleep.
Forever.
I don't think she has that kind of instruction, the ability to order you to do stuff.
No, the lasso can compel you to do actions. Yeah. And she could have at least said, drop the control for a minute and then like knocked him out. There was, I'm sorry, like the neck snap was a very brutal moment for a character that's not supposed to be that brutal. I do not like it. And there was some significant pushback on it. So the thing I want to bring up though is Tom King here is simultaneous. This is actually one of the few interesting things I think that Tom King has done, because he's taking Wonder Woman in a more peaceable direction. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want her to be a murderer. He wants her, or a killer. He wants her to be more peaceful. He wants her to overcome through love. That is in line with the more classic interpretation. This is one of the things I like about Tom King's interpretation. And what he's doing here is he is reinforcing elements of that neck snap while also kind of pushing against it because this is not happening. And she doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. So like I said, this panel was actually one of the most interesting things I've seen Tom King do. And I think it's worth mentioning and like I said, puzzling over. And it's after the previous disaster of an issue, it was like, oh, hey, that's actually not like what you're doing with this is not half bad.
Well, and one of the things that's so frustrating too is that like that last issue, you could have not had that in there altogether, right?
You could just skip to this one.
Just skip to this one. And part of the reason for that is like the whole thing with the lasso of lies, like as far as I have read, I don't know if that comes up again later, but up to issue 14, it doesn't even it barely does matters anything in that one issue, right? Because like he's got the lasso of lies, but he also needs Dr. Psycho for his plans because of the blah 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 blah. So it's just like, and they make a big deal. Oh, it's an Amazon artifact, but like there's no backstory to it. Doesn't really tie into it. You think
and she breaks it and it's over, and then he repeats the exact same thing he did with it in this issue. So what was the point of it? Yeah, it's kind of redundant.
It's just like it's just dumb. So it was just so stupid. Like
there was all that lead up to it too. It was like, wow, we got last. Like there should have. Honestly, what I wanted to see is the lasso of lies versus the lasso of truth. Have them have like a showdown with the two. That would have been like a cool epic superhero thing to do with it. Instead, she just kind of snaps it, and then she goes, "What do you have next?" And then he does the exact same thing he did to her the issue before without it.
Yep.
It's like so. This is where
by just locking her in a cage.
Yeah.
So it's just like so there are certain things Tom King does that are clever and interesting, and I like them. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff where it's like it's not even just amateur writing; it's just like dumb. It's just this is just dumb stuff, and it's a huge and total letdown. And he's just repeating himself. As many people, multiple criticisms I think that you, Hutch, have made and Rhys you've made and that I've noticed, we can kind of come down to the fact that Tom King doesn't know when to stop. So like a story that should have been like maybe 12 pages, no, got to like stretch that sucker out and then repeat yourself over and over with it. And I have noticed overall with this run, there's just moments where it just gets very tedious because it just seems to just be repeating itself over and over again. Even in the same issue, it'll just repeat itself. And it's just like, do something different. Don't just repeat the same note over and over and over again. Yeah. And it's torturous. It's like going through us. And again, it's like, because if you think about CIA torture, right? Isn't the whole point of just how repetitive it is? The water drip, just drip, 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 dripping on your head. So this is just a giant psyop from Tom King to just water torture us with. So like, I
have one thing to say to Tom King. I got one thing to say. No, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, well done.
Unfortunately, we are going to be compelled to continue doing this story because Twitless asked me to, and I said yes.
Because it never ends.
Yeah,
exactly. It never ends.
There you go. So, I got to say the end of Sovereign because I'm too far. I'm in too deep.
So we'll probably hit it again sometime next month. Next week, it's my favorite spy story. So that's I'm calling the show. Is that right? Am I reading the room correctly?
I don't think there's much else to say. Like I found the one interesting panel from like this issue from 10. So unless Hutch, did you have any concluding thoughts to tie it in?
I don't know. This whole story just meanders and meanders. It's like every time you get to the end, it doesn't lead.
There's another end.
It doesn't lead into the next story. None of these stories lead into the next story in a natural, understandable way. Half the time they confuse you as to what's going on, and then they just say to be continued. And next month she's like on an island. And it's like, what was his plan? What's he trying to do? This plot makes no sense.
Well, and like what he's trying to accomplish, which we'll definitely talk about next time we do this, has got some really clever stuff that's going on in the book. And I think it really matches up with what he's trying to do with Wonder Woman, but it doesn't make sense here at all. It's like at all. We'll talk about that then, but it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't lead in naturally. It's just like, oh, here's another cool thing we could do. Oh, here's another cool thing we could do. What if they went to a space mall? What if I had my best day ever? What if we had Wonder Woman in a cute summer dress?
Yeah.
Okay.
What if Superboy and Damian turn into corgis?
Yeah.
That was the worst. That was embarrassing.
Super pets now. Oh, isn't it funny?
I'm sorry. There was already an Astro City story with a super corgi, and it's a wonderful story. And it's like this just taints it.
Corgis are perfectly fine dogs. That was a perfectly bad story. Okay. Okay.
Why don't you just scroll down and show the corgi for the people? Okay. You can end the show.
All right.
We've had a lot of misery. Show the corgis.
I'll show the super pets. And I will say there's at least some visual interesting things that are going on in that issue, like the blank white page. So like the artist is putting in work. So there's some sequential art storytelling stuff going on that for all that we've
the art is great.
The art's great.
I have no complaint about any of the art. Even the layouts are really good. The action scenes are really good. I mean, it's just Tom, man. What the heck?
So we finally see her costume, her real costume, on where it says "World's Finest Part 6." That full page. That's not a bad costume for her, but
no, not at all. So here's the thing: is here we've got Zatanna shows up out of nowhere. And they give something sort of discussion that's supposed to be backstory for what we're seeing, and it doesn't really even make sense. And then all of a sudden, we have Super Corgi here, and we've got Bat Corgi down here. And this whole story is Elizabeth playing with dogs and trying to convince them that they're people, because they're people, not dogs. And that's the joke, guys. So here, we'll do this again. And look, look, dogs like their belly rubs, and dogs like to fight over balls. Oh, look at this. It's
So my question is, would Tom King ever do a story? Would Tom King ever do a story where she got turned into a corgi and the whole story was just the two male leads having to save her? And that's my whole like mic drop on why I'm a big fan of this either, because it's like it's very clear like what's again that Tom King is doing his little like actually the girl really is the important one. It's like you don't have to like lean so heavily into that. We love Wonder Woman with Batman and Superman. You don't have to do what they keep doing in this series with like.
And the thing is, like,
having to lean into why Wonder Woman is actually more specialer than Batman and Superman. It's like you don't have to say that. We like them all three. You don't have to try and elevate her above them. Like this is unnecessary and it's annoying. Stop it.
And it's one of the things I find really annoying about this too is like, yes, okay, if you're looking at a joke, you're looking at the high-low divide, right? You're looking at the fact that you want it to be a little outsized and like taking, tough Damien and masculine John and making them dogs is intrinsically funny, right? But it's literally like Facebook, like one panel Facebook, like scroll comic funny. It's not 8-page story funny. And you can't just keep telling the same joke the whole time. And come on, man. Come on. So anyhow, it's legitimately funny, but it doesn't. I agree with you. Like, why do they have to be the butt of the joke? Well, because that is funny intrinsically, but also like it just goes on, and he's always and like, yeah, Tom just
aren't these guys competent superheroes by this age? They're competent superheroes now. Why are they such fools in the future?
Yeah, shouldn't Damien have a better plan?
Clowns.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing about these little world's finest is from this scene on, like in every one of them, Damien is a buffoon. In every one of them. And,
they both are. They're just clowns. Yeah.
Just clowns. So
and
when they were children, it was kind of when they're portrayed as children, that's kind of fun because kids are always trying to figure stuff out. But when you have, your 13-year-old, your dad's best friend's kid who's 13 is outwitting you routinely, that's just lame. It's just irritating. So so anyway, that's it. So next week my favorite spy comic, and that's the story. After that we're talking about sports comics.
Yeah,
I
won't be in that one. I don't know any sports.
Well, yeah. Any sports at all or sports comics?
Only some. Oh, okay. I'd have to find an old one that my uncle had that I liked.
Right.
He's the one who got me into comics. I read these. I found this collection of very old Marvel monster books, like Where Monsters Dwell and stuff like that. And one of them was a monster comes to Earth and threatens that he will conquer the planet unless somebody can beat him at a sport. I like that story, but I'd have to find that story.
That's a great one.
It's a good story, but I have no idea what comic it's in.
Yeah. The thing that spurred it on was that Fly Fox the other day was talking about why aren't there more American sports comics? And I think that'd be a fun thing to talk about. So we're going to do that next 2 weeks. So
okay,
ideally he can make it. We'll find out. But anyway, that's the show. Get out there, read some comics that are not written by Tom King, guys. Come on, do yourself a favor. Don't be like us. Go read better books. We'll catch you guys later.
Peace.